Welcome to Abstractly African, where culture is a compass, ancestry is a resource, and transformation is a shared practice. I'm Daniela Ayomide, and welcome to March. This month, the topic we will explore covers intergenerational healing from a West African perspective. If you're in the spiritual world, if you tap into spiritual podcasts or esoteric things, you may have heard this popular term going around called chosen ones. Well, I'd like to dive into the experience of a chosen one and how healing intergenerationally shapes the life and experience of chosen ones. So, what is a chosen one? A chosen one is considered the person inside of a family system who the ancestors have elected to be the person that breaks family curses, generational cycles, and radically decides to embrace a new way of being that is different and healthier than what they experienced and what shaped them. Okay? That's what or who chosen people are. Cycle and generational curse breakers. Now, the background experience of chosen ones is painful because it often means separating from the very people who gave you life themselves, your family. So let's explore what family really means in a West African context and in Yoruba cosmology, because we're Ifa over here. Okay? Let's start out. So the family structure in Yoruba cosmology is one that considers the family to be ile, or home. Your ile, or home, is a place of safety, right? Your home is where you rest, where you recover, where you prepare food, where you generate life. So in Yoruba culture and cosmology, the family system is seen itself as a home, as an ile, as a place that generates energy. Okay? So where I find this analogy to be even more powerful is when we consider the perspective that we as humans are cellular beings. Okay? We Africans like to take things down to the details. So when you consider the family as an ile, as a home, you can also think of the family unit as a cell, because we are cellular beings, right? We are made up of cells. What is a cell made up of? So when you think of the family as a human cell, we know that the cell itself is a unit that contains proteins, it contains energies, it contains things that your body needs, right? And it is a unit that is regenerative, right? So cells have that capacity to regenerate, right? Healthy cells do, okay? So when you think of a cell has a membrane, right? And then once you get past the membrane of a cell are its outer walls. Then when you get past the membrane of a cell, you have all sorts of things, right? You have mitochondria, you have ribosomes, I don't remember all the names. Then when you get past those unique elements that make up the cell, you get to the nucleolus, the heart of the cell. So in a family system, in a family ile, in a home, right? In the home economy. The nucleolus of a family are its values. What do we think, believe? How do we act? What determines where we go? How we present ourselves? The nucleolus of an ile, of a family, is its values. The family itself is, of course, the cell. And then you have the cellular membrane, which acts as the boundary that filters nutrients in or out, right? Waste in and out. So the membrane of a family are its boundaries. Hopefully you have them, right? So where we don't go, what we don't do or say as a family, right? Things we don't engage in that don't reflect our family's values are reflected in our boundaries, right? Okay. So from an African perspective, each family member is seen as part of a team, right? Some of us are ribosomes, some of us are mitochondria, some of us help to shape the family boundaries, right? But my point is, each of us inside of our family cells has a unique purpose as part of our family team, working together to make sure our family thrives. That's the West African perspective, right? The family as a unit made up of individual parts that keep the whole together and well, that contribute to collective well-being, okay? In West African culture and in Yoruba cosmology and culture, your family also represents your place in society. Your history, right? The history of your family members, what they did for a living, right? How much land you have, whether your family were business owners, whether they were politicians, right? Whether they were caretakers, workers. West African society is extremely familial. So the family lineage is important because it determines your place in society. It determines your right to land. It determines your right to marry in a lot of cases, right? Especially in tribes, okay? So what's interesting to me when I think about the family system from the West African perspective is that your family really determines your legacy. And then it is your role or your job, right? Your pride to carry forward your family's legacy through tradition, through your work, right? What you do for a living, okay? So moving on, the role and the purpose of the family, the purpose of this cell, this cellular unit, the purpose of the family is to nurture the ashe of its members. Ashe. What is ashe? Ashe is your creative, innate power. It's what you are born with. It's who you are. It's your unique ability and expression as a human being. So when we express our ashe, the role of our family is to nurture our ashe. To observe, like you can observe easily in children when they start to develop their personality, right? Their preferences, what they like, what they don't like. You observe it right away in kids. And of course, many families and family systems are broken, right? No family is perfect. A lot of people have alternative family systems, right? Or no families at all, okay? So nurturing the ashe is the role and purpose of the family. But in West African societies and in Yoruba cosmology, nurturing the ashe is collective responsibility. Because if I am nurturing my children's ashe in my ile, that means I'm contributing to the collective well-being of my village or community. Because the idea is that each person in their ile is also nurturing the ashe of their children. Okay? So let's move on. Haha. The Egbe Orun, when you think of the family system from a West African perspective, you have to consider this duality, as above, so below. In African cosmology, in Yoruba cosmology, the Egbe Orun is your spiritual family, okay? They are beings that have partnered with you through your soul's reincarnation journey, through space and time. So as your soul has lived thousands of lives, right? As your soul has lived and you do life again and again, you gather with you these beings, right? That you do life with. And in your present day self, in the material realm that we can see, it's important for us to maintain this connection to our Egbe Orun spiritually, right? So in the West African family system, in the Ile, we are not just honoring our own values, right? The nucleolus that keeps us together, but we are also honoring our spiritual family, literally, right? Especially if you are Ifa. So you'll see many families come together and they do their Ifa rituals together as families, right? You know, Black Americans, we have a lot that we're learning about our ancient African beliefs, right? I'm laughing because my first thought when I think of the beauty of African families coming together and feeding their Egbe, right? Giving offering to their spiritual family through rituals, right? Through readings even, okay? Through your dafa, your reading. And I laugh because there's this impression in Black American culture, if you come from a Christian background, that doing anything with your ancestors is like demonic. You know, I have to laugh at stuff like that because while that context might exist in the minds of and hearts of some people, it's not reality, okay? Because connecting to the Egbe Orun, connecting to your spiritual family, it's a way to ensure your physical family's safety in the material realm, right? So when you feed your Egbe Orun as a family, or when you honor, you know, your individual Ori, when you honor that tradition and practice, when you pray to Ori, when you do your Opanifa, right? You are taking on that responsibility as a partner with people and beings and energy that are a part of your soul's line that have existed in human history, okay? So the African life is cyclical, and we keep the connection to the circle of life by honoring the Egbe Orun in the family system. So the physical family honors the metaphysical family as part of the Ile. Okay? Now, when you think about the Black family system, okay? When you think about the Black American family system, something that comes to mind automatically is the Great Maafa. This is something I've talked about many times here on Abstractly African. The Great Maafa, the disaster of slavery, the transatlantic slave trade. Can you imagine, right? What that whole experience has done and how it has damaged, right? The original beauty of the African family. And when I say the African family, I'm talking about exactly that. The people who were taken, right? The people who were denied access to their own autonomy when we were experiencing enslavement, right? So what's interesting is The Great Maafa in the Black American mind represents a separation in two dimensions, right? So we as Black Americans, we go through this experience of self-recovery because what we're trying to do is connect back to the original Ile, Africa, Nigeria, Benin, right? Sierra Leone. We're trying to rethread those connections to our ancestral past. Many of us, right? Now, where we move forward, right? Because you could talk about the mental, psychological, and historical effects of slavery for a lifetime, right? You could talk about that for a lifetime. But where we move forward is our understanding that trauma is soul loss, okay? We have to understand trauma as soul loss. And the reason I'm framing trauma that way is because soul recovery is what many of us as Black Americans with this beautiful ancestral lineage, we're trying to recover our souls from the Great Maafa, from this separation, right? Okay. And for many Black Americans, it is a difficult process to retie your soul to its indigenous African roots because, as I shared earlier, many Black families, because of enslavement, were indoctrinated into Christianity. And though we did syncretize our beliefs as hoodoo, it wasn't everybody, okay? And the people who do have hoodoo workers and root workers and spiritualists in their family line, many Black Americans don't acknowledge, or their elders have kept it quiet because, again, Christianity would have shamed us into believing that our ancient indigenous beliefs are quote unquote demonic. Imagine that, right? So when we understand trauma as soul loss, we have to understand or put trauma in the context of genocidal warfare, right? Here at Abstractly African, I refer to this time period, the Great Maafa, as the time period where Black people were enslaved. I do not refer to us as slaves. That's purposeful because the language that we use to describe our experiences, is what gets written in history, right? So as a people who were enslaved, experiencing genocidal attacks, we are at the mercy of soul loss, right? We're at the mercy of losing our souls. And what do I mean by that? Lest we understand this disconnection, we're at the mercy of its pain until we understand it, okay? So what typically comes under attack when there is a genocide or a trauma loss, or soul loss by means of genocidal attack? What typically comes under attack is a people group's language, the language that we speak, okay? West African languages are beautiful. Yoruba, as I am learning and embracing it, it is like a refresher for the English brain that I was born with, right? That sounds so weird and awkward. But my point is, under genocidal attack comes language, the way of being, the way a people express their sexuality, the way a people do their money, right? The home economy, okay? All of these core things that make up people and their culture and their pride, language, history, ways of being, personal economies, collective economies, when those things come under attack, it's not just on a surface level, right? Those things are an attack on the ashe and an attack on the expression of the soul. Okay? That's why you would have heard W.E.B. Du Bois talk about the soul of Black folks, right? In his writings. So, moving on. Moving on. The heart of trauma is disorientation. And I'm going to park it here because I've got a lot to share in the next few weeks. But the heart of trauma is disorientation. And we can use the analogy of the home base to really understand this, right? The ile, the home, or the cell. So when you think about African psychology, Black American mental health, right? This recovery process that we're doing, either within ourselves or our families, when I think of the trauma that Black people experience, right? And the different ways that we experience trauma, it's important to understand that trauma in its root is a disorientation from safety or your ile, your home base. Now, home base individually, right, is your place of groundedness, your place of safety, your place of confidence, that inner knowing that you have, right? I know who I am, I know where I am, I know where I'm going, okay? Home base. Then something traumatic happens, okay? And you then move from home base to this new position, this undesirable place, right? Where you're deeply influenced and impacted by things that have happened to you. So you're no longer in this grounded, safe space in your personal ile. You've moved into a place of fear, trepidation, anxiety, depression, or sadness because of trauma, okay? So then, where is point C? Where do you go if you are traumatized? What's the next place or the next point you move to? Okay, so let's say this is the traumatized point or perspective. So I've moved from my ile, my home base, to now this traumatized space of being. The next space that I have a choice to move to is a space of reorientation. Because where trauma really messes you up is there's this constant desire, this constant pain to the reality of, if I could only just go back to that home base where I felt safe, if only this had never happened to me, if only I had not experienced this, right? If only I had not left that place, and then how do I get back to feeling safe within my body, emotionally well and balanced, right? Physically safe, after I've experienced something so terrible, okay? The reality is you cannot go back. The version of you that exists before the trauma no longer exists, right? That version of you is no longer there. What remains is you in this new position with new frames of reference defined by what you've experienced. So the pathway forward is then to map out your emotional landscape, map out your emotions, map out the support that you have around your emotional landscape to find a new sense of home, okay? So to park it here, many chosen ones create chosen families, okay? Chosen ones, being the cycle breakers in their family, often find that when they don't share the same nucleolus or membrane, when they don't share the same values or boundaries as their original family, many chosen ones decide to detach. Either out of circumstance, right? They just experience too much pain, the family's harming them too much, and they're like, I gotta get out of this painful, harmful family system. That's usually what it is, right? But this new space where many chosen ones, people who are courageous and committed to self-healing, many chosen ones find new community in this new space where they've moved away from trauma and into a regenerative space. Okay? So, thank you for being here, for learning, for taking all of this in. I appreciate each and every one of you. Some of you leave comments, some of you engage with the community posts. Keep it up. I am going to offer a course either at the end of this month or in April that will walk us through all of these hard topics, okay? So when it comes to understanding intergenerational healing, the West African perspective centers the Ile, okay? So creating a new home for yourself, right? Determining your new values and sense of who you are outside of the family Ile is a really important journey in your self-development and in your life. So join us next week as we continue to unpack generational healing and how we move forward. Ashe, ashe, ashe.